Someone was humming that James Blunt ballad that was always on the radio, the one where he keeps repeating the word beautiful. I took off the remnants of my shirt. Then I stuck my head under the water again and leaned back out, dripping on the floor. "Hey, can you get me another towel?" I asked the guard. I had noticed there were stacks of them by the entrance when we'd come in. "Why do you need two?" He leaned inside the shower and said, "Are you kidding? You saw the way I look and smell." He shook his head but went to get the extra towel. "Thanks," I called. I immediately stepped over to the other cubicle, holding the curtain rings to keep them from singing on the bar. Whoever was showering next to me had hung his clothes on a hook in the changing stall. I rifled through the pants pockets and found just what I was hoping for: a cell phone. Seconds later, I was back in my own stall, just before the Marine looped a white terry towel over the top of the bar. "You better pick up the pace," he said from outside the curtain. I turned the shower up hard and as loud as it would go. Then I dialed Ian Flaherty's number. He answered himself. Chapter 120. "Flaherty," I said. "It's Alex Cross." "Cross? Where are you?" "I'm at the consulate. I'm in Africa. They're sending me out of the country. It's going down right now. I need you to talk to someone and get it stopped. I'm close to the bastard. The tiger." He didn't even pause before he answered. "No can do. I can't cover for you anymore." "I don't need you to cover for me. Adan Tansi is dead. He killed her. I need you to make a call or two. I can break this case now." "You don't get it," Flaherty said. "You're done over here. Game over. Go home and stay there. Forget about Abi Shawande, or whatever his name is now." The water in the other shower stopped. The man in there started whistling. I hit the heel of my hand against my forehead, putting it all together. Flaherty hadn't been covering for me at all. I had this all wrong, right from the beginning. "I was covering for you, wasn't I said. The whistling in the next stall stopped for a second, and then continued. "That's why you wanted people thinking I was CIA. I was out in the open. While you played covert, I was a useful distraction." "Listen," I could hear in Flaherty's voice that he was done. "I've got to run. We saved your bacon a couple of times. Be thankful. There's a war going on here. Get the hell out of Dodge. Call me from the States. Flaherty." He hung up at the same time that the shower curtain flew open. The Marine who'd fetched the towel was there and looking totally pissed off. He pushed me into the wall and pinned my wrist. I didn't struggle with him. For one thing, my shoulder was howling with pain. When he reached for the cell phone, I just opened my hand and let him take it. Game over, all right. I was going home, whether I wanted to or not. Honestly, I had mixed feelings. Chapter 121. I left the consulate pretty much the way I'd left Kiri Kiri, as a captive, this time of the American government. I wondered if I could possibly get away again. And did I really want to? One of the Marine escorts drove while the other sat in back with me. Worse, they had handcuffed me to him. I guess they'd decided I wanted to do this the hard way. The main gates to the consulate were closed as we drove toward them. No one was waiting to get in anymore. The demonstrators had swollen in number, though. They were lined along the fence, holding on to it like they would jail bars, cursing against all things American, as well as the life that fate had dealt them. Once we were through the main gates, the crowd closed in around us. Bodies pressed against the car windows, palms slapped on the glass, and fists beat the roof. I could see anger and fear in their eyes, the frustration of lifetimes of injustice and misery. "What do these people want?" the young Marine in back with me asked. His name tag said Owens. "Those hostages in the Delta are Americans and Brits. They're probably gonna die." "What do they want?" the Marine at the wheel said. "They want us not to be here." And nobody wants me here, I was thinking, not even the Americans. Nobody wants to hear the truth, either. Chapter 122. The roadways to Murtala were even more crowded and bustling than the last time I'd been here, if that was possible. We parked at the very same airbase Adan and I had used to go to Sudan. We had to take a shuttle from there. The bus was jammed with American families presumably headed home, or at least out of Nigeria. Everyone was talking non-stop about the terrifying hostage drama in the Delta. No one had been freed yet, and everybody was afraid the hostages would be killed soon. The surprise to me was how little attention anyone gave to two men handcuffed together. I guess these people had other things on their minds besides me and my Marine Guard. The terminal at the airport was overflowing, noisy, and as chaotic as the scene of a bombing. We burrowed our way into a security office to arrange a walkthrough to the plane. Apparently, the handcuffs weren't coming off until I was buckled in tight and pointed toward home. The waiting area was packed, like everywhere else, with all eyes turned toward a single TV. It was tuned to an African channel. The female reporter had a Yoruba accent, just like Adan's, and it was the strangest thing, but that's what finally put me over the edge. Tears started to roll down my cheeks, and I began to shake as if I had a fever. "You okay, man?" the Marine cuffed to me asked. He seemed like a good man, actually. He was just doing a job and doing it well. Yeah, I said. "I'm fine." Still, I wasn't the only one crying in the room. With good reason. Nigerian troops had moved in on the Bonny Island complex in what was supposed to be a rescue mission. Instead, all 34 hostages were now dead. Open fighting had broken out all through the Delta region. Riots were reported in at least 2 other states in the south. The images of the slaughtered hostages were shocking by American news standards. The hostages were lying on the floor of the corridor, adults and children both. The bodies were slumped and fallen, draped over one another, with blood-stained clothes and hoods still over their heads. One woman near me let out a piercing scream. Her family was still down in the Delta. Everyone else was quietly fixated on the screen. "Governors' offices in Rivers, Delta, and Bayelsa states have issued warnings," the reporter went on. "Local citizens are urged to avoid all but the most necessary travel for at least the next 24 hours. Full curfew is in effect. Violators will be arrested or possibly shot." The Marine cuffed to me. Owens spoke. "Your plane is boarding. Let's go, Detective Cross. Hell, I wish I could go with you. I'm from D.C. myself. I'd like to go home. I miss it. You have no idea." I took a number from Owens and promised to call his mother when I got back. A few minutes later, we were all being led out to the airplane. I heard someone call my name, and I looked to one side, toward the terminal building. What I saw there froze my blood and seemed to change everything. Father Bombata was looking right at me, and he raised his small hand and waved. Standing beside him, towering over the priest, if he was indeed a priest, was the tiger, Abi Shawande. The monster ran his thumb across his throat. What was that supposed to mean? That this wasn't finished? Hell, I knew that. It wasn't over by a long shot. I had never given up on a case yet. But maybe the tiger already knew that. Part 4. Home Again, Home Again. Chapter 123. I knew I had failed. And I knew and had known for a long time that I'd already witnessed and investigated enough murders and bloodshed to last me for a couple of lifetimes. Nothing had prepared me for the insane mayhem and horrors of the past few weeks. Torture and episodes of genocide, suffering by innocent women and children. Finally, the senseless murders of Adan Tansi and her family. I wanted nothing more than to escape and to sleep for a few hours on the plane to London, where I would eventually connect with the flight to Washington. But I couldn't stop the terrible nightmare images from my time in Africa. Again and again I saw Adan's murder and rape by the monstrous tiger. And what had come of the murders of Adan and her family? What had been accomplished beyond a failed chase after the killer called Tiger? What of all the other deaths here that would never be avenged or even properly memorialized? What of the secrets Adan had shared with me? I woke with a shiver as the flight descended into London's Gatwick. I had slept some, and now I felt groggy and had an upset stomach and a splitting headache. Maybe it was just my paranoia, but the Virgin Nigeria flight attendants seemed to have avoided me for most of the trip. I needed water now and an aspirin. I signaled the attendants who were collecting cups and soda cans before we landed. "Excuse me?" I called out. I was certain the women had seen me signal, but I was ignored by them again. Finally, I did something I don't remember ever having done on a flight. I hit the attendant button. Several times. That got me a stern look from the closer of the flight attendants. She still didn't come to see what I needed. I got up and went to her. "I don't know what I've done to offend you," I began. She cut me off. "I will tell you. You are a most ugly American. Most Americans are that way, but you are even more so. You have caused suffering to those you came into contact with, and now you want my help? No, not even a cold drink. The seatbelt light is on. Return to your seat." I took her arm and held it lightly but firmly. Then I turned and looked around toward the cabin. I was hoping to see someone watching us, someone who had spoken to the flight attendants about me. No one seemed to be looking our way, nor did I recognize anyone. "Who told you about me?" I asked. "Someone on the plane? Who was it? Show me." She shook herself loose. "You figure it out. You are the detective." Then she walked away and didn't look back. That angry face of hers and the mystery of her anger toward me followed me all the way home. Chapter 124. The next 12 hours of the trip passed very slowly, but finally I arrived in Washington. I wasn't able to reach Nana to tell her I was home, so I just grabbed a taxi waiting at Reagan International and headed to 5th Street. It was a little past 9, and the nighttime traffic was heavy, but I was glad to be in D.C. again. Sometimes it feels that way when I come home after a long, hard trip, and this time certainly qualified. I couldn't wait to be in my own house, my own bed. Once I was in the cab, I got lost in a kind of jet-lagged reverie. No one had any idea about the carnage and suffering until they actually visited parts of Nigeria, Sudan, Sierra Leone. And there were no easy answers or solutions either. I didn't believe that the violence I had seen came from regular people being evil, but those at the top were, at least some of them. And then there were psychopaths on the loose, like the tiger and the other killers for hire, the wild boys. The fact that terrible conditions might have made them killers hardly seemed to matter. The irony that kept jabbing at me was that I'd spent the last dozen years chasing murderers in the States, and it seemed like child's play now. Nothing compared with what I'd seen in the past weeks. I was shaken out of my reverie when the cab slid over to the side of the road. What was wrong now? I was home, and still misfortune followed me? What? A flat tire? The driver peered back and nervously announced,
"Engine trouble. I am sorry, very sorry."
Then he pulled a gun and yelled,
"Traitor, die!"
Chapter 125. Somebody was stubbornly ringing the front doorbell at the Cross House, ringing it again and again and again. Nana was in Ali's bedroom, putting him down the way he liked her to, lying in bed next to him until the sweet boy drifted off to sleep as she whispered the words of a favorite story. Tonight the book was Ralph S. Mouse, and Ali wouldn't stop giggling at every page, often a couple of times on the same page saying, "Read it again, Nana! Read it again!" Nana waited patiently for Janny to get the front door, but it rang again, and then again. Persistent and